परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्य। Hare Krishna. So welcome back to our Nectar of Instruction discussions. So we have discussed till text 3 and we are going to start from text 4. So quick recap of the flow of Nectar of Instruction before we move forward. The next, then Updeshamrit is a book about sadhana. In spiritual life, there are two primary things. Sadhya is that which is to be achieved, and sadhan is the means by which we achieve that. So for example, if I decide that I have to go to Mayapur, so Mayapur is my sadhya, and then I may use a train, I may choose to go by plane. There can be different ways I decide to go. That is the sadhana. So in spiritual life, we need to have sadhya and sadhana clear so that we can move forward. Now, among the 4 books that we have, these two are not like totally divided, but the general focus is there. If we look at Bhakti at Ishopanishad, it doesn't talk much about sadhana per se. It doesn't talk about chanting of the holy names. There are some verses which are prayers which come at the end of the Ishopanishad, but it's primarily a book about sadhya. It tells us about the nature of the absolute truth and the nature of the seer who has perceived the absolute truth. So primarily it is about sadhya. There are things about sadhana which can be inferred, no doubt, but primarily it is about sadhya. If we look at Bhagavad Gita, it contains both. It establishes the position of Krishna as the supreme absolute reality, and then it establishes this position of bhakti as the best, the highest sadhana. Now, if you look at Nectar of Devotion, it also has both. It also, initial part, the 19 chapters that we will study, they focus more on sadhana. But the subsequent chapters, which are for our individual study later, they focus more on the nature of Krishna and 64 qualities of Krishna and the intimate devotional mellows and relationship with him. So the qualities of Krishna are more a description of the sadhya, and the further mellows of bhakti, that is a description of sadhana. So like that, whenever we study any book, if we have the goal clear, then we can organize our study around that. If we start studying the Bhagavatam, and if one goes into the 5th canto cosmology too much, if one is a specialist scientist who is a part of the team to make the planetarium, then that sort of research is fine. But for other devotees, that sort of research is not very relevant. So if we look at that section in the 5th canto, chapter 16 to 25, we'll see that the whole context is devotional. The idea is, if start of the section, end of the section, the idea is by understanding the vastness of the cosmos, one can understand the glory of the Supreme Lord. And by understanding how in the different regions in the world, in the universe, whether we it Kim Purusha Loka or this Loka or that Loka, everywhere there is dharma and devotion. So by understanding the greatness of the cosmos, we understand the greatness of the Lord of the cosmos. And by understanding the pervasiveness of dharma throughout the cosmos, we understand the universality of dharma. So in any study, the purpose has to be clear. Otherwise we can get caught up. So in Nectar of Instruction, the primary focus is sadhana. It is not so much focusing on sadhya. There are practically no verses which talk directly about Krishna. Maybe the later verses which talk about the glory of Radha Kund, and there's a little bit of sadhya, but even the glory of Radha Kund is talked in the context of how that glory of Radha Kund should inspire us to take shelter of Radha Kund. So this is the book of sadhana. So it begins first with physical and mental sense control. That the first verse is generic for our sadhakas. Vacho vegam manasa krodha vegam. This is relevant for jnanis, yogis, and bhaktas. In fact, this verse is universal for all sadhakas. Then after that, what is being talked about is utsaha, nishya, dhairya, atyahara, prayasascha. These are also applicable with modification for other sadhakas. But the way Prabhupada explains it, and before Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur has also given a commentary on it, the way he explains it how it applies to bhakti. But now onwards, from the fourth verse onwards, what is focused on is primarily for bhaktas. Jnanis and yogis primarily do sadhana alone. So, in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna talks about the sadhana of the jnanis, so it says that they live alone. And then, so ekanta and laghvashi, they live alone, they eat little. Vivikta desha sevitvam, vivikta sevi laghvashi. Krishna talks about this twice, once in 13.11, and then he again talks about in 18.51, 52, 53. So, in contrast with that, the sadhana for a devotee is in association. So, as we move forward in the verses, the association and how to take association of different devotees within the association, that will be discussed. So first, the fourth verse, so this theme of association will go on for several verses. Fourth verse will give a general theme of how there should be reciprocation among devotees. Then fifth verse will talk about how to reciprocate with different levels of devotees. And sixth verse will talk especially about very advanced devotees, how we should not see them materially. So that's the progression. Now of course all these principles can be applied for all levels, and we will discuss that. But the basic point is, now we are going more into bhakti sadhana. Not just generic sadhana, but into bhakti sadhana. So let's recite the verse. Dadati pratigrihinati Guhyamakhyaati pruchati Bhungte bhojayate chaiva Shadvidham priti lakshanam. Okay. So, dadati pratigrahanati. Dadati means to give. Pratigrahanati means to accept. So to give and receive gifts. Guhyam akhyati pruchati. So to share our heart, guhyam akhyati. Akhyati means to speak. Akhyahi meko bhavanu krarupo akhyapi. Akhyahi akhyapi. Akhyahi is to ask, akhyapi is to speak. So akhyati. So guhyam akhyati. Speak our heart confidentially, and pruchati, to ask confidentially of others. And then bhungte bhojayate chaiva. Bhungte is to receive prasad and to offer prasad. Shadvidham priti lakshanam. These six are the characteristics of affection, of love, of devotion, of positive emotions between devotees. Now again, if we look at these principles, they are not limited to bhakti. This is the way people develop affection anywhere in life. Now, if two businessmen want to strike a deal, they may invite each other to a hotel, one hotel, and they dine over there. And over dining, they discuss their backgrounds, their experiences, their interests, their aspirations, and then they may share some gifts. And then that's how the relationship develops. So this principle is general. This verse can also act as a guide for relationships in general. And relationships are things which are very much talked about in material life. In impersonalism, they are downplayed, and in bhakti, again, they are talked about a lot. So we talk about relationships centered on Krishna, but ultimately It's a matter of relationships. So relationships are like trees. Now trees in the initial stages, when they are small, first there are seeds and then they grow up. So we have to pour a lot of water and we don't seem to get any returns from them. But once the trees grow up, then they grow, once the saplings grow up and become trees, then they will provide shelter. So initially relationships may seem to be demanding a lot of time and energy, but eventually they provide shelter. So here, how do this relationship work? Dadati pratigrhinati. Giving gifts and receiving gifts. Now if you look at Srila Prabhupada's purport, Prabhupada writes the 6 symptoms of love, and he gives a summary of these. And Prabhupada gives the example of a businessman over here. And he explains that how in devotional life, in Krishna consciousness also, we are doing the same thing. So it's a straightforward purport, at least this part of it. So Prabhupada gives the example that we invite people for food. And we ask them to take prasad. And then we say they're life members, they give some donation, and then we give them some books or gifts. There's a reciprocation. So and we invite them for prasad to temple, they invite us to prasad at their house. So it's interesting, earlier in the same section, in the same nectar of instruction, atyahara, that regulating one's eating was considered to be a very important aspect of bhakti. But at the same time, in that same nectar of instruction, it is said, bhunkte bhojayate jaiva, that offering prasad and receiving prasad, that is also a limb of bhakti. So the idea is that food is not just object for bodily sustenance. The devotional culture subsumes everything. Subsume means what? Consume means to devour something, and then it no longer exists. Subsume means it includes within a broader framework. So for example, if we have the set of odd numbers, and then we have the set of natural numbers, all numbers. So set of odd numbers is subsumed within a set of natural numbers. So subsume means to include within a bigger category. So like that, the nature of bhakti is that it subsumes material activities within it. So there are 3 different attitudes to this world. One is to romanticize the world. Romanticize means, oh, this world is a place of enjoyment. All the movies talk about it. You just meet your dream partner, and once you meet, you will be happily ever after. So even when people come to spiritual life, many times if you search for reincarnation, people ask, first thing they ask on reincarnation is, see, the modern sense gratificatory mentality is so much that they have romanticized reincarnation. And the first thing that people ask many times when people go for reincarnation is, how does one find one's soulmate? How does one find one's soulmate? The idea is, oh, we have some partner who goes on life after life after life, and we just have to find that partner. So, when I asked this question, I said, in the soulmate, we should focus more on the soul part, less on the mate part. So, the idea is that one attitude is to romanticize the world. Oh, this world is a wonderful place, and we can enjoy over here. The other attitude is the extreme. So this is the attitude of karma. The path of karma is romanticizing the world. The path of jnana is demonizing the world. Oh, this world is a place of misery. And the beautiful objects of this world, they're all traps. They're like snakes, they will bite. And this is demonize. Now that is also given in the Bhagavatam. But that is a part of the Bhagavatam which is primarily focused on jnana. So the Uddhav Gita talks about bhakti. It builds from jnana towards bhakti. So there are Pururava's prayers which talk about this sort of thing. So in bhakti, we neither romanticize the world, nor do we demonize the world. What do? We utilize the world. Utilize the world for serving Krishna. And by utilizing, we realize. We realize this world to be Krishna's energy meant for his service. So, food is an object of such glamorization in material circles. There are so many advertisements for fast foods and cold drinks and this and that. So it's romanticized, it's glamorized. And the path of jnana, it is that, people, they just say we will eat only leaves that have fallen from the tree. So, Vatambu Paranashana Bhita Yoga. So, Vatambu Paranashana. So, it is said that in the Govinda Damodar Stotra, it says that the perfection of all these very austere yogis, the three levels of yogis. The highest level of yogis are they who eat Vata. Vata is what? Air. They live only on air. The second level of yogis are those who are Ambu. Ambu is water. So, they live only on water. And then the third level of yogis are, austere yogis are Parana. Parana is fallen leaves. So all these level of yogis, whatever spiritual advancement they make by that, they can make much more spiritual advancement by Govinda Damodar Madhaveti, by chanting the holy names of the Lord. So on the path of bhakti, we don't demonize food, but we utilize it. So it's subsumed. So food is a natural bodily necessity. But the glory of bhakti is, it is not reduced to just that. It is seen as a part of a devotional culture. And when we cook food and offer food to the Lord and then share that food with devotees, then that becomes something which nourishes not just our body, but it nourishes our heart. And we see that this chapter upon chapter in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which talks about how the devotees offered food to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and how the Lord accepted food. And in fact, this is chapter title. Invitation. Advaita Acharya invites Lord Chaitanya to his house for food. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya invites Lord Chaitanya to his house for food. So the idea is that food is the medium by which affection is reciprocated. So, bhunkte bhojayate chaiva. What we do when we offer food is that we are actually offering our devotion for Krishna through that food, to the people whom we are offering that food. So, bhunkte and bhojayate. So, food is the means by which we exchange Krishna with each other. So, that's why prasad, we don't just call it as food, we call it as prasad. And now, bhunkte bhojayate chaiva. So now here we have to remember that the reciprocation is the quality of affection. It is not the quantity of the food. So sometimes, especially say brahmacharis go to the house of grahasthas, then grahasthas want to offer a lot of food. So now there is a karma kandi idea that there is a concept in the Abrahamic religions. Is something similar, not in the Abrahamic religions, in the pre-Abrahamic religious tradition, which has a rough analog. That concept is called as sin eater. You know what is sin eater? In the Greco-Roman worldview, they had the idea that we do certain activities that will be sinful. So there are certain priests whom you invite to your house and you offer them food. And when they eat the food, they will eat your sin also. So you will become free from sin. So it's called sin eater. So these people who are sin eater, they were respected and offered a lot of food. And the idea is that the more food they eat, the more sin will go away. So now some people think that that's the idea. You invite sadhus to our house and then offer them food, and then our sins will go away. Now that is not an attitude that devotees should have. When we invite devotees for food, the idea is to serve the devotees. And serving the devotees means we do it, service is that which is pleasing to the devotees. So if we do it in a way, just try to put more and more food, and thinking that the more food some devotee takes, the more I am becoming free from sin, then there is very little devotion in that attitude. It becomes very self-centered. And even when devotees offer food to us, it is not that we have to take more food than what is our capacity. Because, yes, honoring prasad is also a service to Krishna. But that is not the only service to Krishna. Now we should not do that service so much that we are not able to do any other service after that. We eat so much food that after that we go to sleep for hours and hours together. That is not a good idea. So remember, I had gone once with Sonaj Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj to some devotee's house for food, for prasad, and that devotee is offering a lot of food to Maharaj. So when they offered me, I just said a firm no, but Maharaj said, he told that devotee, the affection of your heart is greater than the digestion of my stomach. So that's a devotional, sweet way of saying no. So we can say no also in a way that is firm, but at the same time gentle. But it is not that this should not, this bhungte bhojayate chaiva is a means for reciprocating affection. This should not be misused as a means for pandering to the urges of our tongue. That has been talked about. That precaution has already been offered in Atyahar. That we should not do Atyahar. But within the limits of whatever food we take, there is bhungte bhojayate chaiva. So we offer food and we accept food. And through that, the whole culture of devotion is maintained. In fact, this happens even in the spiritual world. Radharani cooks food for Krishna and she offers that food, and we see it's interesting that in the description of the spiritual world, there is mentioned that there is kalpataru. Every desire is a wish fulfilling tree. But if we look at the pastimes of Krishna, which are described either in the 10th canto or in the Anandam Champu, Gopal Champu or other books, we don't find any of the devotees asking anything from the desire trees. The gopis want to do practical services. The gopis don't, Radharani doesn't say desire tree, just produce some halwa, produce some rasgulla, produce some paratha. No, Radharani wants to cook for Krishna. Because in that service, there is the offering of the heart, there is the connection. Yashoda Mai also cooks for Krishna and she loves to cook. So the point is, the facility is there, and the facility, if it is required, devotees can use the facility. But so when they had to make Radha Kund, thousands of gopis came and they started digging to make the Radha Kund. And then there are certain times when even Radharani may use mystic powers. She has mystic powers. But the primary focus in devotion is service, is engagement. So that is bhungte bhojayate chaiva. Now, this is a very important statement over here. The life of the Krishna conscious society is nourished by these 6 types of loving exchanges among the members. It's significant. The life is nourished. So, what is the life of Krishna conscious society? It is referring to relationships. We have Krishna consciousness, which is individual. Everyone of us has to develop our individual Krishna consciousness. But what Srila Prabhupada established, following the example given in Chaitanya Charitamrita, is a society. And it's an international society. So now a society means that there are reciprocations, there are relationships. And relationships develop by these 6 exchanges. So it's nourished by these 6 types of loving exchange. So we will see that normally, how do we perceive or remember other people? First is that we look at those people. So how they look, that creates some perception. Then second is we see some person who's coming for the first time to the temple. Okay, how does that person look? Person is dressed decently or is dressed in bedraggled clothes or unclean clothes. That creates one impression. How they look. And second is what do they do? What do they do? Is this person an engineer, or this person is NRI, or this person is that or that? So that's something which creates second impression. Third is what they speak. That person has just come here to ask, I've got some marriage of my daughter and I want to know whether you hire the hall for marriage, you hire the Govindas. Or somebody comes and asks serious philosophical questions. What they speak. And fourth is how they speak. If somebody speaks in very cultured, refined language, this is a well-educated person. So not just in terms of education, but in terms of upbringing and everything. So basically, when we form impressions of others, the fourth thing, how they look, what they do, what they speak, how they speak. This is how we develop impressions about people. And then afterwards, if we see how they behave, that's what forms the subsequent impressions. And what does behavior include? It includes speech. It includes the reciprocations that happen. And in one sense, the dati pratigrahanati could have included bhunkte bhojete chaiva. Tatati pratigranati is giving and receiving. So prasad is also an item that is given and received. But here this is put separately because it is such an important item. So although there are many gifts that can be given and received, but the idea of this particular food item, it is such an important way in which human affection is reciprocated, that it's talked about separately. So if we look back at the memories of devotees or memories of friends that we have, they'll be primarily centered on these things. Maybe it was a birthday and somebody gave us some gift to us. We may remember that person like that. Or maybe we met that person that spoke something very witty, very humorous, very inspiring, very instructing. Or we spoke something and that person heard attentively. We gave that something to that person accepted it. So if we look back at the our relationships have some high points, and others there's a normal state of relationship. And normally we deal, how are you, I'm doing this, we do that work. There's a normal states of the relationship, but the relationships have some high points, and the high points are all centered around these things. And those high points that are there, they are what nourish the relationship. So what is Prabhupada saying over there is very deep, that the life of the Krishna conscious society is nourished by these 6 types of loving exchanges. So to the extent we have these, to that extent the relationship with the devotees and the relationship with Krishna will deepen within our heart. So we know that prasangamajaram pashamatmana kavayo vidu saiva sadhushu kruto mokshadvaram apavritam. The 3rd canto, in the discussion between Kapila and Devahuti, it is described that attachment to the material is very difficult to give up. Prasangam, ajaram, pasham, ajaram. Jara means old age. So prasanga is attachment. So the body grows old, but the attachment doesn't grow old. The prasangam is ajaram. It's a pash, it binds us. So the atmana kavayo vidu, the wise people know that a material attachment is very very difficult to give up for the Atma. But saeva sadhushu kruto, if the same is directed towards the sadhus, towards the devotees, then mokshadvaram apavritam, and the doors to liberation open. So attachment to devotees is very auspicious, and the attachment to devotees is developed by doing these 6 activities. So now when we talk about giving gifts, so here Prabhupada talks about again another point here. Sangat sanjayate kamaha. So Sangha has many meanings. Sangha can mean attachment and Sangha can mean association. So actually, if we look at the literal flow of the 2.62, dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha. Most of you know this verse, isn't it? So there, dhyayato vishayan pumsaha, when you contemplate on sense objects, what happens? Sangasteshu pajayate. One develops attachment for them. I see something, I see some advertisement, okay. Some object, some new cell phone is there, new laptop is there, new dress. Hey, that's nice. So what happens? That's nice is a sort of attachment is developing. And then if I keep contemplating on it, then I want it. That becomes kama. And then who says I can't have it? I'm going to have it. That becomes krodha towards any opposition. That's how it grows. So if you look at the literal translation, that is referring to attachment. But the Bhagavad Gita is not a limited book. It is the word of Krishna, and Krishna's words can have many meanings. So here Prabhupada explains the word Sangha in a different way. That Sangha can also mean association. So Sangat Sanjayate Kamaha at one level can mean by attachment the desire develops. If by contemplation attachment develops, attachment desire develops. But Sangha can also mean association, and in association desires develop. So Prabhupada himself has said that the Bhagavad Gita verses can be translated in different ways. In fact, the previous acharyas have translated the Bhagavad Gita verses in different ways also. So sometimes if you look at Baldev Vidyabhushan's translation, it differs from Vishwanath Thakur's translation of a verse. It differs from Prabhupada's translation because the Gita has very deep import and different translations illumine different facets of the Gita. So here Prabhupada quotes that Sangat sanjayate kama. So then he goes back into the basic philosophy, saying how we all need to purify ourselves. So now the point that Prabhupada is making is, Prabhupada is not just sticking to these 6 exchanges. He's going back to the foundations, why we need these 6 exchanges. And he explains that let's recite this verse. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem, Siddha Krishna Prem, Sadhya ka bunai, Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte, Karaye Uday. So, Nitya Siddha. Nitya Siddha means actually it is eternally present, but it is sadhya. So, it is not accessible to us. But Shravanadi, by Shravan it will become accessible. So, the Krishna consciousness that is dormant within us, by hearing in association, it will become manifest to us. And then Prabhupada quotes Chetodarpana Marjanam. The purpose of quoting this is, again, to make the point that by purification, we will be able to access our dormant Krishna consciousness. And that Krishna purification happens in the association of devotees. So then Prabhupada goes into the conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur. So again, the point of this conversation is what? It is the process of purification. And then he describes over here how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he made animals dance. And Haridas Thakur asked to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how will people be delivered? So this is giving for 2 purposes. One is, he is giving this conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur, which is given now the Mahatmya. It is for how there is Guhyam Akhyati Prichyati between the Lord and the devotees. And also, along with that, Prabhupada is also saying that this demonstrates the process of purification. Yes, by chanting, one will become purified. And then Prabhupada says one should inquire about the Krishna conscious movement. This is Guhyam Akhyati Prichyati. So now, here I'll just go through this purport and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. Now Prabhupada contrasts Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Yoga with other margas, other paths, and he says that there are all these other paths but they are subordinate dharmas. The Bhakti Marga is the Paro Dharma, and he quotes Bhagavatam 126 for that. And then he quotes that when we have to have these 6 exchanges, we need not have these exchanges with those who are non-devotional and especially those who are anti-devotional. So he wants, and then he quotes that Vishayiranna khaile Dushta hai man nahi Krishner smaran. He quotes this from CICC. So that these 6 exchanges should be minimized or avoided with non-devotees, because that will affect our consciousness. And then Prabhupada tries, the conclusion is that we should always keep association, and he gives the basic principles of devotional service. And then the important point is, he talks about the Madhyamadhikari over here. You know that Madhyamadhikari, what are the 4 characteristics? Have you discussed this? Sorry? Prema, Maitri, Krupa, Upeksha. Good. Prema, Maitri, Krupa. Prabhupada is saying, in the middle state, is expected to develop love for the Supreme Lord, make friends with the devotee, show favor to the ignorant, and reject the jealous and the demoniac. So, why is he talking about this over here? This is a guideline for us to understand with whom we should do the 6 exchanges. So now, the Uttamadhikari is transcendental. Uttamadhikari can give association without being affected by bad association. But we will get affected by bad association. So, now what do we mean by bad association? At one level, any the materialistic association of sense gratifier, that is bad association. But along with that, even the association of spiritualists who have different conceptions of spirituality, which are different from the conception given by the acharyas, that can also create disturbing desires and doubts in our consciousness. So, Madhyamadhikari may be able to associate and stay unaffected. Sorry, Uttamadhikari may be able to stay associate and stay unaffected. Kanishta Adhikari will be immediately affected. Madhyamadhikari can stay unaffected, but still that will not be for long. See how it is, again going back to the example of a tree. Now when the tree is in the sapling stage, very small, at that time it requires enormous care. if the sapling is basically a tree in a very small stage. If a sapling is exposed to storms, is exposed to heavy heat, it will wilt away. So in the natural course of the growth of the tree, the sapling requires protection. But when the sapling grows up to a huge tree, that time it can withstand storms, it can withstand heat. So like that, our bhakti right now is in the sapling stage. So we need fence, we need protection. And then as it grows further and further, then it becomes a normal tree. It requires less protection. But still some level of protection is required. So Madhyamadhikari also one should be careful. And Uttamadhikari, one can actually give association without becoming contaminated. So now with respect to these activities a little bit more from a practical sense. So I'll focus more on Guhyamakhyati Pruchyati, but let's start with I talked about Bhunkte Bhojyate Chaiva. Let's talk about Dadati Pratigrahanati. In gifts, there is the content of the gift and there is the intent of the gift. The content is what I give and the intent is why I give. So both are important. So the Lord is Bhavagrahi Janardana, and we'll see for him what is more important, content or intent? Intent is more important. And we see that in the pastime of Krishna going as Shanti Dut to Hastinapur. So the content of Duryodhana's feast was far better than Vidura's wife, whatever she offered him. But the intent of Duryodhana was exploitative. He wanted to create a division between Krishna and the Pandavas. And he wanted to sort of bribe Krishna to come on his side. So Krishna did not appreciate that. So the content, among the content and the intent, if you have to see, the intent is more important. While this is true, it is also true that the intent is expressed through the content. Generally speaking, if somebody's birthday is there and I give a card, and while writing the card, dear Prabhu, and I misspell the name of the person only while writing the gift. Now what does that indicate? That sloppiness indicates a lack of attention, a lack of care. So although the intent is more important, but the intent should also express itself in the content. So if there is the desire to appreciate or please a person by giving something, that desire will express itself by how I offer the gift. So I may say that, okay, I want to cook for Krishna. I want to cook for devotees. So that intent is good, but along with that, I should also be attentive while cooking. If I don't cook, if I don't know how to cook, or I don't cook carelessly, then the intent does not necessarily always compensate for the absence of the content or for the low quality of the content. Most importantly, the intent should not be used to justify the poorness of the content. So the idea is, if the intent is there, the content that we offer will be the best that we can offer. That's how the intent is expressed. So now in the devotee culture, we see that there are gifts that are given in different ways. So we might just give some gift on birthday to someone, or we may give a gift on some special occasion. Some devotee has done something for us, we may feel, I would like to give this gift to this person. So normally speaking, whenever we receive a gift, now we should also do something for that person in return. So if somebody gives donation to a devotee in the temple, the devotee should also feel that I should do something for that person. Maybe I should give some books, maybe I should give some something by which that person will learn how to come closer to Krishna. So if we take only and not give, then the reciprocation is not complete. And when the reciprocation is not complete, not only does the relationship not deepen, but also often we may become a little bit implicated, because we are accepting but we are not giving. So as a Brahmana, it is said the Brahmana's mouth has to do two things: accept bhojana, but also has to do bhajana. It has to give jnana. So if the Brahmana accepts only bhojana and does not do any bhajana, then that Brahmana is not doing the Brahmanical duty properly. So when we go generally to houses of devotees, we speak about Krishna. So we accept prasad, but we also speak about Krishna. So that way, there is dadati pratigrihnati. So when gifts are given, the whole idea of giving gifts is to give tangible form to that which is intangible. To give what? To give tangible form to that which is intangible. We may have some affection in our heart, but others cannot see what is there in our heart. So, if we feel gratitude, if we feel appreciation, the gift becomes a means by which there is a tangible form is given to that which is intangible. And then those gifts often become mementos. If they are given well, then people remember us by those gifts. And we remember others by those gifts. So these are not some items which can just be neglected. They are important. And the way we may give gifts may vary according to person. Generally, the gift can be best given according to the interest and the need of that person. So that indicates thoughtfulness on our part. That means if a devotee has interest in reading books, then if some new book has come up, I give that book as a gift. If a devotee has interest in music, then if that devotee's birthday, then I can give some kartal or something, a nice thing which can help that devotee in that particular interest. So rather than giving a blanket gift for everyone, if it's also good, at least some level of gift is given, but further thoughtfulness is indicated when we sort of consider the other person's likes and dislikes and help that devotee in service to Krishna according to one's own interests and talents. So that is thoughtful gift. Dadati pratigrihnati. Now normally in material society, this is talked about also in the 17th chapter, that gifts are given ettu pratyupkarartham. So I give gift and then I expect that I should get gifts. So on his birthday I give that gift. Why has he not given anything to me on my birthday? So now at one level this may be a natural human expectation. But what we should do is we should recognize that ultimately we are doing this as a service. So if we are appreciating that devotee, if that devotee has done something for us, when we want to appreciate, then we just appreciate it. If that devotee gives us something back, that's wonderful. If that devotee doesn't give anything on our birthday, to some extent it's natural that we may feel that, oh, this devotee did not reciprocate. But that does not necessarily have to become a dampener for the relationship. Naturally, if there is a reciprocation, the relationship will progress further. But if some devotee has done something for us, we can still appreciate that and we can go on that level. When there is a reciprocation, naturally the relationship will grow further. But when there is no reciprocation, then at whatever level the relationship is, it can still stay. That means if somebody is doing something for me, I can still appreciate that person, even if that person doesn't sort of give me any gifts in return. Now, what are the examples of gifts given in Chaitanya Charitamrita by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his devotees? Sorry? Yeah, Raghunath Goswami, he gave Govardhan Shila. Any other examples? Actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, yeah? Sandal too? Yes, that's also an example. That was a memento for her. She could continue serving her Lord by that. If we look at the interactions between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Goswamis, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, especially in the last 18 years of his life, was largely in ecstasy. He was in Puri and he just lived in a state of ecstasy, and he himself did not do much preaching. And even his associates also, they did some preaching, but the systematization of theology, the creation of a foundation for future generations to go on, that was done primarily by the Goswamis. Now if we look at the Goswamis, they had, relatively speaking, limited association with the Lord. Very limited. The number of times, say, the only Goswami who had sustained association with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Raghunath Goswami. He came and stayed in Puri for a considerable amount of years, almost like 12 years. But the other Goswamis, Rupa and Sanatan, what happens is they keep writing letters, then they meet him in Ramakeli once, and then after that they go to Vrindavan. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, I'm going to come to Vrindavan, and then they come to Puri to meet him. So that's all, basically speaking. And then they go back to Vrindavan. So if we read these chapters where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu interacts, of course, when they're going to Vrindavan, at that time, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also in North India too, and the Goswamis are also leaving. So they meet him in Varanasi and Banaras. So, sorry, Prayag, yeah. Varanasi and Banaras are the same thing. So they meet him there, and they basically have interactions over there. So, if we see what happens in the meeting in Varanasi and Banaras is Guhyam Akhyati Prichyati. That happens also in Ramakeli. So, these are practically the only meetings. Similarly, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, once a meeting in South India, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells him, now you serve your parents. And then Gopal Bhatta Goswami comes and surrenders his life. And then again Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tells him to go to Vrindavan, and he goes to Vrindavan. Raghunath Goswami, he meets him in Bangladesh first, and then he meets him in Varanasi. Uttapan Mishra has been told to go to Varanasi. And then after Raghunath Goswami comes once to, after his parents depart, he comes once to Puri, and from there he goes back to Vrindavan. So the meetings are very few. But what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does during these meetings is, he intensifies the devotee's attachment to him. And that is primarily through the second exchange. Guhyam Akhyati Pachyati. When Rupa Goswami is writing Lalita Madhav, at that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu profusely appreciates, this first. He says that this handwriting is like pearls. And then he looks at the content, and he finds the content so beautiful. Rupa Goswami at that time composed Tunde Tandavini Ratim Vitanute, the holy verse about the verse about how ecstatic are the holy names. That I want thousands of mouths and millions of ears to relish this. And then he calls all his associates, Sarup Damodar, Ramananda Rai, and all the associates, and tells them, hear the poetry of Rupa Goswami. And they all hear, and they all appreciate it. And they shower profuse blessings on Rupa Goswami. And so, Rupa Goswami becomes very inspired and goes back. Sanatana Goswami also, what does Chaitanya Mahaprabhu do? He may not offer any gift, but the gift that he offers is himself. Sanatana Goswami's body is completely filled with pores. And so what does Chaitanya Mahaprabhu do? He offers his own embrace to him. And what more can touch a person's heart? Then, when such a situation is there, when one feels and one is, in one sense, physically in a state of repulsiveness, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't look at that. So, actually, if we look especially at the Antalila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not doing much preaching directly, but indirectly he is linking very deeply with the hearts of those who are going to preach. And that is also very important. Preaching is not just about getting new people to Krishna, but also getting people who come to Krishna to come closer to Krishna. And that coming closer to Krishna happens through these 6 exchanges. So, Guhyam Akhyati Prichyati. Now, in our spiritual life, how do we do this Guhyam Akhyati Prichyati? We may have a counselor, we may have some senior devotees. So, we have to find out that association which is Sajatiya Asha Snigdha Sangha. Rupa Goswami has written another book, Nectar of Devotion. And Nectar of Devotion talks about 64 principles. One of the principles about association is Sajatiya Asha Snigdha Sangha. Snigdha means affectionate. Sajatiya Asha means Sajatiya Asha. Asha is desire, Jatiya is category. Same category of desires. So we have to find out senior devotees who have the same category of desires that we have. So if I have an interest in cooking, then I find out devotees who are interested in cooking. If I have an interest in Shastric study, I find out senior devotees who are interested in Shastric study. And then I inquire more about them. And this is vital for our devotional growth. We cannot share our heart with anyone and everyone. Not only will we not feel comfortable sharing with anyone and everyone, but even if we somehow share it, there may be counterproductive effects. That person may not understand what we are talking about, and that person may just misunderstand, misrepresent, and spread things about us which will unnecessarily create trouble. So we have to have affectionate devotee association. So now it's unlikely that we will have many devotees in this category. Now, even if we have 1, 2, 3 devotees, that's more than enough for us. We can have a general positive disposition towards all devotees. But along with that, intimate association that is there, where we can guhyam akhyati pruchati. So if I have some anarthas troubling me, then I have to find, I may have to ask about those anarthas. So I can ask general philosophical questions in classes, but along with that, if I have some specific problems, I have to ask to specific senior devotees. And similarly, I may have some philosophical doubts. Now, when I have to ask philosophical doubts, I have to find out devotees who have that inclination to resolve issues properly. Some devotees, they say, you ask a philosophical question, why bother about all this philosophy? Just chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Now, if that is their inclination, that is fine. But if those doubts are troubling me, then I have to find out some other devotees who can systematically resolve the doubts. So, Guhyam Akhyati Pruchati is vital, but at the same time, it is also very critical how we choose this, with whom we do this. So, when we find the right kind of devotees to do this with, then our bhakti takes off wonderfully. So this may take some time. And with respect to relationships, it's important that wherever relationships click, we should invest the time. It's not, we need to have some good relationship with the devotees who are around us. But I may be in one project, some devotee, I feel very affectionate towards that devotee. I feel very close to that devotee. Then, even if the devotee is far away, it doesn't matter. We may meet once in a few months, we may talk on phone or whatever. Now, wherever relationships work, we should treasure those relationships. Now, Krishna's gifts come in many ways. One of them is this association. But what kind of association? Sajati Asha Snigdha. We generally say association is very good. Yes, association is good. But what kind of association? All association is good, but specifically for the nourishment of our devotion, we need association that is like-minded. So if wherever we find like-minded devotee association, we should grab that and treasure that. And by that, our bhakti will be nourished. So Guhyam Akhyati Pruchati has to be done carefully. And by doing it carefully, we remove the obstacles on our path. See how it works, the basic principle of Guhyam Akhyati Pruchati is that we focus on those things which are deep within our heart. Now see, in our heart, there are two things. There are anarthas which are blocking us from going towards Krishna, and there are some devotional inclinations also, which we can take us towards Krishna. So we have to do two things. One is the anarthas that are there, they have to be controlled and they have to be ultimately eliminated. And then the inclinations that are there to serve Krishna, they have to be fanned, they have to be nourished, so that they grow more and they take us towards Krishna. So going back to the example of the plant, of the gardening, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used the example of Bhaktilata Bij. So Bhaktilata Bij has to be watered, and the weeds around it that are there, the weeds have to be uprooted. So both these happen in association. Now at one level, just hearing classes attentively can also give us guidance. And if we hear attentively, ultimately we are not just hearing from a particular person. It is Krishna who is speaking through that person for us. When we hear, we learn a lot from that person. If we have that attitude of learning from Krishna. And along with that, we can also ask specific questions. So when we do this Guhyam Akhyati Pruchati, we can move forward very steadily and sweetly in our Krishna consciousness. If we find out the right devotees for doing this. And if we don't have, then that doesn't mean that there is no hope. Whatever devotee association we have, we value that, we treasure that. And gradually, Krishna will guide us. Okay, this is the devotee. How we show Krishna our seriousness is by valuing what He has given us. And by showing that by showing Him that we value what He has given us, He will give us more. And then we can move forward in our spiritual life.